Welcome to the Hunting Beast Report, a live video podcast with Dan Infalt and host Jeremy Gillespie.
All right, welcome to episode 5 of the Hunting Beast Report. Today I'm joined by Mo Reyes. Mo, how you doing?
Great, Jeremy. How's it going?
Good. On a quick note, obviously it's Mo and not Dan. Dan is still in Iowa, so we're going to talk to Mo today, who is having an incredible 2023 deer season. We're going to talk, first off, a lot of people probably don't know you, Mo, so give us a little background of who you are, how you got into hunting, and where you're at today.
Sure thing. So Mo Reyes, been hunting for about 8 years. So I'm 39, started when I was 31. Actually, Dan was one of my first, what do you want to call instructor of slaying deer many years ago. And actually met him up in Wisconsin, was at his house, took us out to the field, learned everything about, doe bedding and spending time in the woods, learning about the lease side and all that kind of stuff that everybody already is very familiar with. So I've been taking all those teachings and grinding it out like most guys have been. And this year just was, tagged out in Illinois. It's insane already with two booners. And incredible. We can talk about
so let's jump right into that. And you showed me prior to us jumping online here, that first deer you've got a shed from it. So why don't you show us the shed and maybe start with finding the shed and where you went from there?
Sure. Well, I'll show you guys the shed first. This is from the spring. Pretty good mass, you can see.
Yeah, that'd be an exciting find.
Yeah, it was actually the only shed that I found this spring, but that one makes up for it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we can talk about this deer. So found the shed in the spring. I actually hadn't had him on camera until the day that this happened. So this actually happened on the 28th, October 28th.
And that's this year, correct?
So yes,
like 10 days ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So everybody who's in the Midwest knows that we got that cold front at the end of October, which is just perfect. It's just, that's what you want. And so this piece where this happened at, it's a pretty small piece. It's less than 50 acres. And this happened on the third sit overall, only the second sit on this specific stand. This stand is in a very, very small island of trees. There may be like 3 trees. One is a really massive one, huge trunk. And it's facing north side. It's actually pretty open. It's looking at a transition line / division between some of the beans and some of the grasses, native grasses, and there's some hedgerow in front of it. So it was pretty open. The last time I had sat there was maybe like 2 weeks prior to this, and I had seen a small buck in the distance. I'm like, okay, well, this is not quite ready yet. So I came down and that was it. That's it. So going back to this 28th, hunting by the weather, we had the pressure rising. Over time, I'm becoming more and more interested in what that's doing. Temperature and pressure rising, barometric pressure rising. And that day we had a northeast wind. And I actually wasn't going to hunt that stand. I had a different stand that was just maybe 100 yards from this spot. And that stand is a perfect transition zone. It's actually not a transition zone, it's a staging area that hits into a food plot. And it has a scrape right there. And that's a spot where all the bucks that I have seen were hitting that spot every evening. If it was colder during the day, they'll show up during daytime. If it was warm, the warmer days, they'll show up after dark. But that was the spot, and I was just itching to get on it. But that specific day, we had the wind wasn't quite right. It was like northeast, and this stand is just east of this staging area. So I'm like, if something comes up, it's a bit too risky. So and we're still in early October, so I wanted to play it safe. So pick the stand. From this stand that I mentioned before, I can actually see this other stand from where I'm sitting, because it's all wide open. So I have my binoculars, and I have a cell camera down in that spot. And around 5 o'clock, I had this fawn at the base of the tree, just like messing around, eating here and there, not doing a whole lot. And I thought it was going to be a slower scent. And then I get the text message from the cell camera, and there's a mature deer that comes out of there pretty consistently. And I've been kind of holding out from not shooting that one. It's got pretty good beams, but the tines are a little bit on the shorter side. So that's my I guess my last my last chance buck. So I was
Right.
keeping tabs on him, but I wasn't real thrilled about taking him out, even though he's a pretty big deer. Right behind him comes out this buck, and I actually hadn't had any pictures. I think I mentioned this, any pictures from this buck from the shed the entire season.
What about last year?
Not last year either. Just
Okay.
all I had was the shed. That's it. So so I got the picture from the trail camera. If you look at and I can share this with you, the picture, he doesn't look that big. He actually looks kind of sickly because of the angle he was in, and the rack doesn't look that big. Either way, so I got the text message. I look at it. I'm like, okay, there's this same old buck. The other one, I'm like, that's a new one. And because of the picture, I wasn't like that excited about it. But I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. And because I can see from where I'm sitting all the way back, like I said, 150 yards with the binoculars, I can see the big body, and then I see this giant rack. It's a big of a slope as they come out. So I see the first one, the big guy. And I'm like, okay, I've seen you quite a bit. And then I see the other one, and you see just like this towering rack just emerging. And like everybody knows, like your heart starts pounding. Then I started kind of like beating myself up for not sitting on that stand, because it's like you and I were just talking about this. Is like if you see them as one thing, but actually put an arrow in them, getting an opportunity, are two very different things. So the two of them come out. Right now it's like 5:20. I want to say 5:30, and I'm just watching them. Meanwhile, I have the phone beneath me, and then I see another spike that comes out in the distance. And I'm just like, I'm watching them. Then the spike is getting a little jumpy. And then I'm watching the fawn too. Is getting a little squirrely. I'm like, well, I got the wind on my face. I'm not sure what's going on, but they know something's up. The spike takes off running, tail down. I'm like, all right, like maybe so a doe or something. I'm not sure. I look back up in the distance to look at the two bucks, and the older one, the more mature one, goes back into the bottoms, and I lost sight of the other one, the big one, the big wreck, the 180. So I'm like, well, I guess he's gone. That's it. Well, the fawn. Then I look back down at the fawn, and the fawn is just like I don't know. It's like jumping, but like not really playing. Like it was just super strange. And then all of a sudden, just takes off running. I'm like, what the hell? Tail down. I'm like, it cannot be my wind. And all of a sudden, this giant deer just starts following the edge between the grass and the egg. And I'm like, I'm not ready. I'm holding my binoculars when he's coming down. And
How far away is he at this point when you spot
at
him
this
again?
point, when I first laid eyes on him, because there was this very long branch from the tree that I was on, it was kind of blocking exactly where he came out of. So I couldn't see him coming from a long ways. He was like perfectly placed behind this branch. So when I finally laid eyes on him, I want to see he was like 60 yards. And he was
real
coming
close then.
Yeah, and he was coming straight at me. So it's one of those things where you're like, immediately start getting the shakes. You try. I'm like putting my binoculars like down slowly, trying to reach for my rangefinder while trying to grab my bow as slowly as I could, because he's still facing me. I have tons of cover behind me, but not a whole lot in front of me. And I think he's at like 35 yards. So I get the rangefinder, and it's like my hand is shaking. I'm trying to range him, but my hand is shaking, and and he's moving too. He's like not staying put. So I get like, I'm like looking, I'm like, oh, like 30, 32, 35. And at the same time, I'm trying to grab my bow. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like just losing my mind. And then he, just like the fawn, gets all squarely. And again, no, it cannot possibly be my wind. And like I said, this wind was coming from the northeast, and he like just takes off running to the southwest. So I'm like, that's it, like game over. He's gonna catch my scent, and it's done. And so I'm sitting there just licking my wounds, just like beating myself up, like, why didn't I have my bow in my hand? Why wasn't I sitting sideways, like be at the ready at all times? Like the moment I saw those two giants come out, I should have had my bow in my hand, and I should have been ready. So I'm just like beating myself up. I'm just like super annoyed with myself. And I'm like, well, by now it's like 6, I want to say it's like 6-ish. And it's starting to rain. And I'm like, oh man, I'm like, do I get off, do you get off the tree? Do you just like wait it out? I'm like, I was just sitting there. I'm like trying to figure out what do we do? So what I came up with was, well, if I come down, get off the tree, almost guaranteed I'm gonna bump him. I'm gonna run into him on my way out because I have to go the same way that he went. And so I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe he comes back. But this I'm gonna be ready in case he does come back. So I kind of sat sideways so that my sitting position is right. Had the bow in my hand, had my release, everything at the ready. And sure enough, like not like 3 minutes later, 4 minutes later, he's very slowly walking right underneath my tree, walks right in front of my trail camera, and it's like 9 yards. So,
Oh, geez.
so like now it's like, okay. And he's just like directly beneath me with a perfect, what do you call this? Broadside shot. So I'm already sitting down, already have my bow. I'm just like, I didn't even think about it. I just drew on him, leaned over as much as I could. And the angle and it's so high and so steep of an angle. And it was just all happening so fast. I was like trying to like, you just kind of have to thread that needle between like the spine and like between the shoulder, behind the shoulder. Like it was just a really tough shot. And I remember like blatting at him and like trying to stop it. I actually don't think he stopped when I blat at him. So I shot at him. It actually, I don't know, I want to say I got maybe 10, 12 inches of penetration. And I spined him. It dropped right on the spot. And I'm like, I know exactly what to do when this happened. And this has only maybe happened to me once before. So I reach out as quickly as I can for another arrow. He's like literally right beneath me, like on its side, with his back facing me. So I grab the other arrow. As I grab the other arrow, I drop the quiver off the tree.
Oh no!
Yeah, so I'm like, this one better work because gotta make it count. So I grabbed the second arrow, and like just took my time. And I put it right behind the shoulder. And it was a much easier shot now because he was laying on his side. So yeah, drilled both lungs, and then like that was it. Like he's like stop moving. I actually think I caught the lungs and the heart on the way in. He kicked a little bit, but like that was it. And this all happened in like most guys know, like this was just in seconds. This whole thing just happened in just like seconds.
Yeah, within the span of 10 seconds, you see him, and then he's out in front of you, and you're shooting.
Right.
Yeah.
It's insane. And like I said, it was like not raining hard, but it was coming down a little bit. So all of a sudden, I'm like, dude, what just happened? And I'm just looking at this map. I actually took a picture of him from the tree, and he's got the one arrow with like the 10 inches of penetration, and then the other one with the two lighted knocks just like glowing. And I'm like, dude, I cannot believe this just happened. I don't have to track this deer. I know exactly where it is. And like just hop down, got off the tree after maybe, I don't know, I waited for like 10, 15 minutes just to like collect myself.
Sure.
And hop down, and then I realized that it was the same buck from the shed.
Yeah.
And I just pick him up, and like I think I showed you the video on Instagram. Like when I woke up to him and I pick him up, I'm like, holy shit! Like the
Yeah.
size, like it's just like I am like lifting him, and like just the mass. I mean, like I said, like just look at this. Look, just he's much bigger than this now.
And
But I'm just
Mo,
like,
real quick, I've actually got a picture that I think I'm going to be able to live stream. So let me try pulling this
yeah,
up here and see if this works. Yeah. Okay. So it's going to cover your face, but keep telling the story. And for people that are watching, this is the buck Mo's talking about here. Pretty incredible.
right. So by now it's like almost dark, so I get, I'm holding him. I've got my flashlight on my hat, and it's raining a little bit, and it's just unreal, man. Like that feeling that we get when we finally close the make it all happen, when they finally go down, when you find a wounded deer, or whatever, like this is why we hunt, for that moment. And it's just surreal. Like I just an incredible deer. Like he has everything that you want in a buck. Like
And I
it's just
imagine this is the biggest deer you've ever seen on the hoof, right? Like in person.
yeah. I'm kind of glad that this happened so quickly, because if it had been one of those situations where you see them coming from a long way, and like you just like looking for an opening to shoot them and all that kind of stuff. Like I think if he had been one of those slow progressions, I think I would have lost it. Like just the buck fever would have gone the best of me. So I guess he just played out in a nice way.
Yeah. So let's talk about obviously you found the shed. So that's a big clue that at least some point in the year there's that giant deer in the area.
Right.
What do you think it was about that setup, or looking back on it now, knowing that deer was in there? Anything about the habitat or the setup that you feel like maybe the area is low pressure? What do you think enabled a deer like that to grow up in that specific area?
Right. Several things. So like I said, and Dan talks about this, right? Like don't burn your spot out. Don't burn it out. Like just go when it's the right conditions. Go when you're feeling confident about it. The fact that I put this tree stand right on a transition, on an edge between grass and the ag, like every single day. I mean, if you look down, you can see that they are running back and forth, just following the edge of those two parts, and being disciplined about your wind. Like if I had gone to the other tree stand, I would have seen him come out. What if he caught my wind, and that would have been it? And maybe I never saw him again after that. So at times I would say it's probably better to play it safe. Take your jabs, and like in this case, I went in there like thinking it was going to be more of like an observation sit, because of how removed it was. I'm like, if something comes in, fine, but I can see a lot from here, and I wasn't. It's a spot that's more on the fringe, so I'm not diving into a bedding area or anything like that. It's not even the right time to be doing that, in my opinion, like in that day.
Sure.
So yeah, that's in a nutshell really what I think helped.
And then, so as we alluded to in the opener, you're having a pretty incredible season. That was October 28th. Talk
Right.
to me maybe what happened between then and your next hunt for this other giant deer that you killed this year.
Yeah. So drove the next day to drop off the buck at the taxidermist. He scored it. He came up with it 182.8.
Is that not that it matters? I don't care. I'm just curious more than anything. Was that gross or net?
That was gross.
Okay. And it looks pretty symmetrical, so it's going to net real good too.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about him is that on one side, his right side, he's got five points on the right side. On the left side, he's got 8. So he's
wow.
4. So he's a 9-pointer that scored 182. So talking with my taxi, he's like, dude, if this guy was a 10-point, like both times were exactly the same.
Yeah, you're pushing 200 inches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he's like, we would be very, very close to a 200 with this buck, especially with how symmetric he is with the tines and the brows and everything. So, I mean, either way, like this is just
Yeah, deer of a lifetime, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So between then and so I actually took a week off. I have some friends that come out of state, and we hunt a different property. So I'm like, well, I think I got a really good buck out of this one, and I was looking forward to hanging out with my buddies that are coming from out of state and hunting with them. So fast forward, and I didn't hunt until the week of November, the weekend of November 4th. So like a week ago.
Okay.
Just over a week ago.
This is 5-6 days after you killed the first one then.
Yeah, about a week after that. And so we had another cold spell on that weekend. The Saturday, I remember the morning was still going to be on the cooler side, and then it was going to warm up significantly after that, and that has been what we have been seeing for the last few days. Has been super, super warm. So that Saturday, so my buddies I thought my buddies were going to be there ready to hunt in the morning, and I'm like, well, like I guess they're not there yet. And so I texted one of them. I'm like, hey, like, I think I'm just gonna go in the morning and hunt in the morning. Like, I'll just see you guys when you get in at night. So I started walking in at around like 6:15. Got to the tree stand, and this is all gray light. I don't like using the flashlight.
This is a morning hunt then?
Yeah, morning hunt, 6:30. Yeah, like start working 6:30 and walking into to this spot. This spot is it's a transition zone. It's almost like it is a pinch point. It's a funnel that connects a lot of timber with bedding, and we had a north wind that day, and it wasn't a strong north wind. I want to say it was like 5 or 6 miles per hour that morning. And the stand is just downwind from that pinch point. And around 8 o'clock, actually took a video of the first buck that I saw. 8 o'clock, I see a buck coming from the west. I mean, pretty good buck. I mean, immature buck, but like a good buck. I'm like, oh, cool, like they're moving. That got my hopes up. Looking back to what happened the week before, I'm like, okay, there's deer movement. Grab my bow, be at the ready, because now it could happen any time.
Yeah.
And so then, like, again, like 10 minutes after this deer, like, heads up north. I started hearing some rustling, and it's actually right in it kind of drops this. It's a bit of a draw in this connection point. And I start hearing a little bit of like rustling. There's a lot of bush honeysuckle in this spot. So it's really hard to see, but I could hear like some, not crashing, like chasing crashing, but it was like something was trying to get through all the brush. And it was actually just east of me. And at some point, and I saw a tail. I didn't see a rack, I didn't see anything, but it was a lone deer. Turn around and then headed north. What I thought happened is this deer just couldn't get through all the mess and just turn around to try to find a different way, because it was just a tangle in that spot that he was going to. And on his way out, I grunt called it. Just a couple grunt calls. I'm like, here goes nothing. We'll see what happens. And about like, I would say like another 10 minutes after that, and I was looking at that area, I see it. The deer they ended up shooting pops out of the draw, but he's coming directly north, which is great for my wind. But he's coming at me like head first. What's really cool about this spot is that I have the sun behind me. So if he's trying to look at me or look up, he's just getting the sun right in his eyes. So he comes out, makes a right turn, because there's another scrape there. Makes a right turn, and like right before he steps out into this, it's a bit of an open area to then go into the woods. He just stops there, and this is like the 15, 18 yard shot, and he's like right again, perfectly just slightly quartering away. And this time, like, I took my time. Like, I drew back. I remember perfectly looking at my bubble, and my bubble just being way off. I'm like, oh shit! Like, let me fix that.
Right.
And not that it matters at that distance that much, I don't think. But I just remember, I'm like, oh, I actually slow my game down enough to notice that, okay, you got to just make sure your form's right and everything was good. And I just, like, ripped it right behind the shoulder, complete pass through, and the arrow just, like, spat out on the other side, completely covered in blood. What really shocked me about it was his reaction, because once the arrow zipped through him, usually what you see is that they do the mule kick, or they take off running or something. He just stood there, like you could see, like, he was almost like in shock for like a couple seconds where he didn't move. He's like what just happened? And then he took off running, but he wasn't like just bolting out of there. It was like kind of between like trotting and sprint. Like, he just wasn't like just hauling ass like they
Sure.
typically
Kind of
do.
delayed reaction though, huh?
Yeah, yeah, and then pull up the binos. I could see him the whole way through. Maybe about he went straight and made a right, and maybe like 60 yards. Like, he stopped and then dropped, and like that was it. And I'm like, I know exactly where it is. I know that I knew I drilled him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, just like again. I'm like, it's just been a week, and this thing is enormous. Not as big of a deer as this one, but he's got 20. If you want to pull up the picture of him, he's
Yeah, I'll
got
go ahead and
20.
do that now.
One of his beams, one of the beams is 27 inches, and then the other one I think is 25. And we, my buddies who have him on the trail camera, they call him freight train, because you just look at the shape of the wrecks, just like they come straight out. It's insane, and like lots of mass on those beams. So anyway, so I'm texting my friends who haven't even shown up yet. I'm like, I guess I'm tagged out already,
Yeah.
guys.
What a
And
great feeling, huh?
yeah, and again, like, this is not normal or common for me at all. It's just been like a wild season. So I
Well,
got off the tree. Go ahead.
let's talk about that real quick. So, yeah, I know you say
Sure.
it's not common, but and that you've been hunting seriously for 8 or 9 years, but you got a pretty good buck hanging on the wall behind you that I can see, and you said you got a few more what you would describe as solid, 120 type, 130 type deer. And
Right.
everybody knows if you're going to shoot a big buck, there's got to be a big buck around. That's part of it. But what do you think you've learned in the last couple of years that has probably put you in the situation to be shooting some bucks like that this year?
A few things. I guess the most important one being where the big deer are, right? Like, you don't hunt any ghosts. Like, if you have trail, like, proof of life, if there's a big shed, if you have trail camera pictures, like in this property of big deer, they are consistently moving there. Like, figure out a way to make it happen. You can always, grind out the rut and hope, cross your fingers that something comes by. But I think coming out of this, I felt like I'm becoming a fan of October because of the pattern.
Sure.
I have grinded it out for weeks, like every single day, rain or shine, hot or cold, in the past. And it just, like, completely messes up with your head. Yeah, that, by the time you're done, you're like, oh my gosh, like, is this even going to happen? And like, we've all been there. So hunting a place that has big deer before the rut, do not rely completely on the rut if you can. And then the other one would be really get like the weather. I'm becoming more and more of a believer of cold. If you're gonna hunt, then you want to have good, like, just great hunt, great odds. Hunt when it's cold, or get a front with a rising pressure. Like, I've looked at some of the stats on barometric pressure and the number of pictures on the trail camera. Like, anytime you see above 30, is like double or triple the number of pictures on the trail camera. So, like, there's something about it.
Yeah.
So I just become more, like, I guess, hunt smarter, not harder, in a way of, like, just purely on the, like, the days that I choose to be there. And also, if I'm hunting smaller pieces, like, I don't want to burn out the spot. So I'd rather just go in there in a more methodical way when I know it's like the conditions are right. It's worth burning a scent. because everything else is aligning versus like the past couple of days. I've been now filming my buddies on the tree with I'm up in the tree with them, and it's a grind. Like I mean, we all know what it's like, especially with this warm weather, and you're just waiting for something to happen, and you can spend from sunrise to sunset on the stand and maybe see a spike on a 2-year-old, and like that's it. And I bet you this Thursday, this Friday, it'll be like flipping the switch, and they'll be bouncing all over the place, and you're like, oh yeah, I maybe should save my sanity for those days. But it's a rut, and anything can happen anytime. So
Yeah, it's this time of year, double-edged sword. But I want to
yeah.
first of all, I want to say a few things here. If you have any questions for Mo or myself, go ahead and drop questions in the chat. We're going to do some Q&A here in the second half of the show. So if you've got anything, if you put a question mark at the beginning of the question, that helps me find them. So I'd appreciate that. And then jumping back to what you said about October, it's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today, and I said, it seems like more and more states with, and it can happen in October openers too, but states with early to mid-September openers, it seems like the guys that I know that are killing big bucks consistently, they're almost always doing it at 2 times a year. It's the first 5 to 10 days of an early season opener, early to mid-September. And it seems like so many big deer go down in the last 5 to 10 days of October, especially on those cold fronts. So, and I think you touched on it there, right? That's before everything's went crazy and chaotic, and those deer, if they're in the area, and it sounds like that second deer, you guys knew that was in the area, that's a great time to catch a deer that otherwise would be moving, right on the fringes of dawn and dusk. Maybe get that extra time you need to get a hunt in and kill it. So great time of year to be in the stand.
100%. The one deer was the buck from the first property that I mentioned, the mature deer, but with the smaller rack. I knew like he's so killable all of October because he was there every single evening. I haven't seen him now for the past in like a week, 2 weeks. Like that consistency, that pattern is gone. It's out the window. Like now it's just grinding it out, and like, but in the upside, like you could come across like another, like a 200. Who knows? Like
Right.
anything can happen now. So it's like you were saying, it's a double-edged sword at this point.
Yeah, I've been really interested in, and for people that are listening that haven't checked them out, I've talked about it on my channel, my podcast, and I actually had Dwayne Diefenbach is the guy's name. He is a deer biologist at Penn State University. And if you've ever read the Penn State Deer blog, they do a lot of radio or GPS collar studies. And it's pretty interesting to see what happens, especially this time of year. Like, and I'm not saying this is what happened, but that deer that you shot, the first one, he might have had a totally separate summer range and moved a mile or two into what was his rutting range, and vice versa. That buck that you had there, that other mature buck pretty consistently that disappeared, might have did the same thing. They might have swapped places essentially, or they went somewhere else. So it's interesting what can happen. And those studies for me have been real eye-opening about why you see certain deer year after year at certain periods, or you don't see them, especially on, like you were talking about, hunting small acreage. That stuff can happen, and it's really important that you're efficient with how and when you hunt, and when you hunt especially.
That's right.
We had one question here so far, but I think we covered that. Mo, where are you from? Illinois. And both of these bucks were shot in Illinois, correct?
That's right. Yeah,
we don't need to be any more specific than that, especially after you're shooting both of those bucks, giant bucks. That the second buck there, it looks like it broke the G2s off, and we talked about that a little bit. You had it on trail camera, and those were there. Any idea? Was there another big buck in the area that you knew of? I'm always curious when I see a buck that large with broke tines, like what happened? What broke those, right?
Yeah, there are other big deer that we have on the trail camera that my buddies are trying to get after. And it's the same thing we were trying to figure out. Like, I wonder who got in the fight with this guy, because he's huge. He's 270 pounds.
Was that live weight or dressed?
Live weight.
Yeah. He was, well, even dressed, that's a monster deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's huge. We so I brought him to taxidermist as well. That one with the G2s, by looking at the pictures and try to estimate the length, we think he would score like a 167.
With
And
if the tines were intact still.
if the tines were there.
Yeah.
And the taxidermist told me that the first deer was even bigger and likely heavier than this guy. So if this one was 270, he told me like probably the first one was, because I brought him the whole deer. He likes to cape it himself. Like he knows exactly what he wants to take. But he said like he could have easily been 300 pounds.
Yeah, that's crazy. Those Midwest deer. I mean, you know, I hunted Iowa 2 years ago, and that's part of the reason Dan's not here. He's down in Iowa, and actually, I think he posted a teaser today. So I think he actually wrapped his hunt up real recently. And as far as I know, he's working on that video. So he didn't give me any time frame when he posted it, but he usually turns those things around pretty quick. So I'd imagine in the next few days, we're going to see some highlights from Dan's Iowa hunt. But getting back to the point, those deer where the winters are a little milder and the ag is so abundant, boy, they get big. They get real big.
Yeah. Well, I have hunted in northern Wisconsin before, and it's crazy because the bodies of the deer are humongous, big deer. Like they have to be to survive. I mean, it's really survival of the fittest up there. But the racks, for what I saw, and I hunted there for 3 years, love the chocolate brown because they're rubbing against like swampy and a lot of pine, and it's just like these dark brown tines, but they're not huge. They the bodies are huge, but the I guess up in northern Wisconsin, there's not a whole lot of ag, so they're just eating whatever they can find in the woods, so they don't get that kind of nutrition that corn and soybean fed Illinois deer get, or Iowa deer.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Michigan, and same thing. I have some friends and it's some family actually that live in the UP, and similar. A lot of times you get fairly big body deer still, but the antler size relative to, and a lot of that's winter, and now northern Wisconsin and northern Michigan both have wolves, so it's impacted the antler genes up there for sure.
Yeah, agree.
We got a question here from Catfish News. I don't know what the second part of the name is here, but it says, Mo, do you ever hunt off the ground? If you're not hunting off the ground, how high are you sitting typically?
Off the ground, depends on the tree. It really depends on the tree, right? Like I'd like to be like 4 sticks high. So where does that put us? Around like what, 15?
Yeah, 15, 18 feet.
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, if it was, I'd love to shoot one on the ground. I've been caught in situations where I'm walking to stands, like noon, thinking like, oh, it's perfectly fine during the rut. And sure enough, like that's when people talk about this all the time. Like, sit from 10 to like 2, and that's when they're moving. Sure enough, it's happened to me before, where I'm like walking to my stand noon, and there they are, like big ones, just coming face to face, and I'm like, hi, like I got not ready to shoot you right now, and then they take off. But yeah, like that would be an awesome hunt, regardless of the doe or little buck, whatever. Like I think that would be just a cool experience.
Yeah, I don't think I've talked about it. I try not to interrupt Dan too much, but we don't have a ton of questions, so I'll tell the story real quick. Both of these deer, which are actually my 2 biggest archery deer, I shot both of those off the ground. So this deer I shot in Montana early season. I spotted that deer about 75 yards away, and a lot of Montana is fairly open, but I was working through kind of a small slough. So like North Dakota, South Dakota, you get a lot of those cattail sloughs where there's these little tiny pothole swamps. And I was working the edge of one of those, spotted that deer in a bachelor group, and I just was basically stopping to observe. I was in a small patch of like 5 or 6 cottonwoods looking at that deer, and by luck, it started working towards me. While it was coming uphill towards me, I was just a small hill, 5 to 10 feet above it, but I was in some really tall grass around the edge of that slough, and I couldn't shoot it. I actually drew on that deer 3 times inside of 25 yards, and it just kept stopping to feed, and I don't know how it didn't bust me. I did have a really good wind that day, like a 12-mile-an-hour wind blowing in my face, and long story short, that deer just kept getting closer and closer, but I couldn't shoot it. I could only see like basically the throat patch up, and it got to 7 yards, and I drew on it again at 7 yards and shot it. So that's one of my favorite hunts. Pretty incredible. And
That's
then
awesome.
the other deer here, which would be, well, moving the wrong way, it's reversed. I shot that deer in South Dakota in 2019. And what happened with that deer is my buddy Joel, we were going to meet up and hunt in South Dakota. I got there a day early. And the one thing I always recommend to people is if you're going on an out-of-state hunt, especially in an area for the first time, I like to spend the whole first day scouting. I mean, if you only got 3 days, that's kind of tough. But if you've got 5 days or more, spend a day scouting, get to know the lay of the land, do some glassing, first light, last light, see where the ag's at, check your spots you cyber scouted. And I ended up seeing 2 mule deer bucks. We were in an area that had mule deer and whitetail across the road, just off the property line on some public land. So I grabbed my bow, jumped out, and was going to put the stock on them. And probably 400 yards from the parking area, I ended up kicking up that buck, locked down with a doe. And happy anniversary, actually. That was November 7th, 2019. So 4 years ago today. And I didn't know it was there, so I spooked it. I called Joel and I said, hey, I just saw 2 shooter mule deer bucks that were like 130, 140, and a really tall brow tine whitetail buck. I said, I'm going to go back there in the morning. The next day it was super cold. It was like 5 degrees out, and there was snow, and the snow had like warmed up during the day and froze, so it was real crispy. I'm like, there's no way I'm stalking anything. And this particular area had tons of junipers. There was no good tree stand trees. So what I did is I walked with about 150 yards of where I'd seen that deer before, and knowing what I know about deer biology, usually got about 48 hours when a buck is with a hot doe. So I figured if she was in heat yesterday, she's probably still in heat today. I grunted, nothing. I waited about a half hour. I moved up to the next draw system, grunted again, and that deer came charging out of the junipers and looking for me, and I ended up shooting that deer off the ground at 18 yards. So that probably, those are my 2 favorite deer hunts I've ever had, for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. That sounds amazing. That's a wild one. You made me think about something that I think people should do. The day that I shot that first deer, I actually shot my bow. And I always carry like a little small target, and I'm like I'm gonna practice. I have some time to kill before I head out for the evening hunt. So I threw the target out there and I shot at it. I think it was like 30 yards, and I was like off by like 6 inches to the right. So, and I made the adjustment right then and there. But can you imagine the whole thing could have played out differently if I hadn't adjusted my sight? So like, do yourself a favor, like just double check that you got your that your sight's spot on, because that could have completely ruined this hunt.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've been guilty of in the past too. And it's easy to get complacent during the season, quit putting the reps in. I mean, I try to force myself to shoot once or twice a week. This year again, I did it. After I wrapped up my elk season, I didn't shoot my bow for like 2 weeks. I'm like, I got to start shooting again. And I had a mishap or two on elk, so I just double checked my bow, and I carry a target when I go out of state too, for that exact reason. A couple tools, like those are great in-season tips, and it's easy to forget about that stuff, especially when you're getting all excited about the rut and everything going on right now.
Yeah, for sure. Take the time. I mean, you don't need to shoot 100 arrows. You just need, 3, 4. Just make sure that your confidence is good, your sight is good, like everything, and then you're ready.
Yeah, peace of mind for sure.
Mhm.
We got a couple other questions here. This one, that's Killuminati Thou, I think is how you say that. Dan tagged out in Iowa. I believe he is. I think he posted a teaser on his Facebook today. Looked like some antlers and an Iowa tag. So I don't want to say any more than that, because I think he's working on a video, but yep, he's tagged out as far as I know. Trey Hosky says, how's everyone's activity? I have a North Dakota either deer tag, so I can shoot and this is only good for archery, I can shoot a mule deer or a whitetail. And I went to North Dakota last weekend, and I'll tell you, Western North Dakota, the activity was bad. It was slow. We started to get that same warm up that you were talking about, and they had maybe 6 inches of snow. I got there Thursday, and it started to melt, and it made hiking around in that steep terrain real terrible. I saw quite a few does, saw about 40 does, but I only saw 2 bucks, and I hiked 20 miles in 2 days, and then it started raining and I came home. So activity in my area is terrible. Sounds like activity in Mo's areas has been amazing. So
Not this past couple of days. Like I said, I've been on the tree with my buddy since actually the past couple of days. I just drove back home today. But like I said, it's warm, and even in the morning, it's like on the warmer side. And trail cameras are almost dead, like right now. So, but again, like anything can happen at any time, and if I still had a tag in my pocket, like Thursday morning, I'm in that tree for sure. I probably wouldn't be on the tree today or tomorrow, just given the conditions. And I want to stay like sharp. I want to stay high energized. So I just have done, like I said, like the sunrise to sunset, literally for like 10 days
Yeah.
starting November, and it's just, I mean, some guys can do it. To me, it's just like demoralizing. Some of those days when you just don't see anything but squirrels. It's just like,
Yeah.
come on, man. It's like November 6th. It should be happening right now.
Yeah. Well, I feel like especially early on in the rut and late in the rut, when the doe numbers that are in heat are low either way.
Right.
I've seen in a couple different states, I've seen where you'll have 6, 7, 8 bucks on one doe. And it's like, if you're seeing that, it's amazing. If you're anywhere else, you're having a rough hunt. Yeah.
That's right.
Table Rock guy says hello from Ozark, Missouri. Hello, Table Rock guy. Buck Slayer says, is Mo tagged out in Illinois? It sounds like you are. Are you going to another state now? And maybe talk about, I don't know much about Illinois. What's the tag structure like there? How many do you get? What are they good for? What seasons? And if you're going anywhere else?
Sure. Illinois is a $2 state. I was actually just reading the regulations. I'm not sure if out of state is $2. I think it is, but it's worth looking into it. I know a lot of guys that come down from Wisconsin. Some of the guys that actually learned to hunt with or hunted with come from Wisconsin. I have some friends that come from Georgia. I know some guys come from either north or South Carolina. So it's certainly popular to hunt to hunt over here. I think the tag runs around $400 for out of state folks. What else? We introduced straight wall cartridge this year for the first time. It used to be
Shotgun only.
Yeah, shotgun only with slugs. What else? I mean, that's I think.
What about the public land? I haven't looked into it much, but I've heard or read somewhere that some of those pieces are like sign in, and then let's say there's 10 slots, and when the 10 person signs in, then no one else can go for the day. What's that like? And is that state pieces, or how's that work?
It's different. I know exactly what you're talking about. So I've been to places where you need to get a what do you call this? It's almost like a log where it prints out your information from the DNR. You literally have to print this out and put it on your truck. It has your information, and you have to keep track of like how many days you hunted and do you shoot anything, and then DNR collects that information at the end of the year. That's probably the easiest way of doing it in certain properties. Other ones, like you said, have a limit where you would have to show up in the morning, and then the park ranger would have almost like a meeting in the morning to figure out who gets to go where. There's actually a drawing who gets to pick first dibs on a spot for some of these pieces. They tend to do that a lot more when it's shotgun rifle season, because you have even less people allowed in the woods just for safety reasons in some of the smaller pieces. And there are other areas where it's a draw. So like I know there's an area where it hadn't been hunted forever. It was like a preserve or something like that. And then all of a sudden, like they're opening for hunting. So obviously, I'm sure like the age structure there was going to be awesome. But then you had to draw, lottery to get into that type of piece. So yeah, it's kind of ranges from pretty easy to like the more complex.
No, appreciate that information there. That's I've never hunted Illinois, but I've wanted to, and I imagine at some point in the future I will. So maybe I'll pick your brain again on that, Mo, when the time comes. Let's see. Twigs Angling says, awesome episode, fellas. Mo, congratulations.
Thank you. So, like I said, like this is certainly not something that I do often.
Well, maybe it is now. You never know. This might be the first year in a trend.
Yeah, people say like once you kill your first booner, all of a sudden you're killing them left and right. I'm like, well, I hope that's true because that would be awesome.
Well, Mo, we're getting ready to wrap up here. Few notes for people that are listening. Today is November 7th. I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to do some mule deer hunting here in Montana, and I won't have cell service where I'm going to be at. So no cell service, no internet service, no show. So the next 2 weeks, which would be the 14th and the 21st, there will not be a show. So if you're tuning in regular, we're going to pick back up on, I believe it's the 28th, whatever 3 weeks from today is, should be the 28th, I think. So no shows, but I do believe Dan's going to post his video here in the next couple days to a week, so you can look forward to that. And Mo, I want to thank you for joining today, sharing your stories. Pretty incredible year, amazing bucks, and congratulations to you. And thanks for sharing your background with us as well.
Sure. Thanks for having me, and good luck, everybody. I think this is the week. I think Thursday's your lucky day for sure.
Yeah.
Good luck, everybody. I think you go kill a big one. I'm sure you're gonna find it.
All right, Mo. Well, thanks again, and we'll catch everyone next time.